Good afternoon. My name is Tweed Taylor. My son Neil and my nephew John.
Take it from the top.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Tamika Taylor. My son Neil Taylor and my nephew Gian Johnson, who I'm currently the legal guardian of, are students at PS 21 in Staten Island. Neil just finished the 4th grade and Gian just finished the 3rd. When I took Gian in 3 years ago, he couldn't read. Now his reading is absolutely amazing. His transformation is remarkable, and knowing that he's making such progress helps me get up every morning. Gian, like many kids, need more support. To understand the material, he needs small group attention. At PS 21, his teachers are beyond patient. They sit with him until he gets it and demands his very best. I drop him off at school knowing that he's part of a community that nurtures, supports, and pushes him forward. Neil has also made incredible gains. Ever since the new principal, Mr. C, came.
Pleasure. There you go.
Neil never wants to miss a day of school. There are role models all over the school, and Mr. C tells them, you can be anything you want to be. And I'm proud to say both Neil and Gian had perfect attendance last year.
Wow. Congratulations to you.
So I'm excited, but not surprised that PS 21, like the city as a whole, is making progress. At PS 21, they're talking about college already, and PS 21 is an elementary school. PS 21 has partnership with Wagner College, together with the local middle school IS 51 and Port Richmond High School. They've visited Wagner, and they're asking my kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? Next year, we're getting a college and a career center. Again, this is an elementary school.
Love that.
PS 21 now, families at PS 21 now have access to a health clinic at Port Richmond High School, which is a community school. If your family needs medical care or even any advice or support, you can go there. There are many programs that make kids want to go to school every day and makes sense for families. There's a new free after-school program. The kids are taking a computer media class where they create digital portfolios, and there's a reading program that involves the parents. PS 21 is a school on the move, and today surrounded by parents, principals like Mr. C. I know the city is on the move. As a mom and an aunt, I know that our schools are transformative. They set our children on the path for a brighter future. I want to thank Mr. C for his tireless work for kids, and I want to thank Councilor Farina and Mayor de Blasio for all you're doing. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Mayor de Blasio.
Thank you so much. Wow. Thank you. Well, first I have to say, Tamika, thank you so much for sharing this wonderful good news of what's going on at PS 21. And Mr. C, congratulations. I'm just going to call you Mr. C also. Congratulations, and to everyone at the PS 21 family. It's just a beautiful story of a school on the move and getting better all the time. And Tamika, I want to say you gave everyone credit but yourself. I think involved, active parents make a big difference. So let's thank Tamika. But what you said that I particularly loved, and this is what we aspire to for the whole school system, you said that your kid wants to go to school every day, looks forward to going to school every day. That's an amazing thing. That's what we aspire to, that love of learning, that engagement. And that certainly speaks volumes in terms of what we're here to talk about. So Tamika, thank you for a beautiful, beautiful story of what's happening in your family and your school. This is a good news day, because so many educators in this city working more closely than ever with parents, have found ways to reach our young people more effectively and prepare them better. And it's showing up in so many ways now. We're here to talk about one of the ways we measure what's happening with our young people, which are the test scores that the state reports on each year. And we always say there are many, many ways that are necessary to evaluate the progress of our young people. Test scores are one piece of the equation, but test scores do tell you something very important. And the good news for all New Yorkers today is that for the 4th year in a row, our test scores have gone up in our public schools, in both math and English. 4 years in a row. This is great credit. Great credit due to our educators who work so hard and to engaged families who are the allies and the partners of the educators in that process. So we're here to celebrate because we've said from the very beginning with our equity and excellence vision, the goal is to reach every child. The goal is to create a standard of excellence. The goal is to break down some of the barriers and disparities of the past so every child in every zip code gets equal opportunity. Look, PS21, what a great example. You listened to Tamika's story. You know, I would love to see any school anywhere that has all these wonderful attributes. There are schools in wealthy suburbs that would love to have a college program and a career in college center, even at the elementary school level. That's making me very proud of our public schools, that we're starting to develop things in everyday public schools that are the envy of educators all over the city, all over the state. That's what we want to do, to create that kind of excellence throughout. This is a day to celebrate, and I want to give appreciation to some of the folks who will not be speaking first. I want to acknowledge their hard work in bringing us to this day. Particular thanks to First Deputy Mayor Tony Shores, who has worked so closely with Department of Education for years to help us build this progress. I want to thank the DOE's Senior Director for Research and Policy, Michelle Palladino. I want to thank the Vice President for Elementary Schools at the UFT, Karen Alford. And we have a number of principals here today. I want to thank and congratulate the principals who are here. And I want to note they come from traditional public schools and they come from charter schools as well. And they all deserve great credit for the progress that they are making. And of course, to the parents who are here, thank you, because as a public school parent myself until just a short while ago, I know that the first educators in every child's life are our parents. So let's give a round of applause to the parents as well. Now, let me give you the facts because they are remarkable. So 4 straight years of improved test scores for the kids of New York City public schools. In the area of English, this is extraordinary. Over the last 4 years, so going back to the last full school year of the previous administration to the school year that just ended in June this year, in the last 4 years, our kids have become 54% more proficient in English. In 4 years, a 54% increase in our English test scores. Isn't that remarkable? And math was not for all of us the best subject, but nonetheless, our kids are doing great on math. 27% increase over 4 years in our math scores as well. Congratulations to all. So those numbers are extraordinary. 4 years in a row of increases, that's extraordinary. But let's look inside these numbers a little. The gains are consistent across every borough and among kids of every background. So we saw increases across the board. We saw increases in all 32 school districts in English. And this is really important, all 32 school districts, every single one of them improved in English. But here's the other thing about the English tests. For the second year in a row, New York City outperformed the rest of the state of New York on the English test. Isn't that amazing? And I think bluntly, not so many years ago, that would have been an impossible statement to make, to even imagine New York City Public Schools outperforming the rest of the state, including a lot of schools in jurisdictions that are very well resourced and suburban areas. When you add the whole rest of the state together, we outpace them. We want to continue that great progress. And look, our renewal schools, which we put a huge effort into addressing, they also did better on these tests. They, in fact, outpaced the citywide average on these tests and showed consistent improvement. So a lot here that convinces us, every time we see progress, it convinces us more progress is possible. And this is one of the things I'm so proud of, and I congratulate everyone on. You know, there was a long time where there was an assumption our schools really couldn't move forward much. But when you see progress 4 years in a row, it convinces you we're just at the beginning of an ascent. We're going to go a lot farther with our public schools. The equity and excellence vision is the right vision. It's what we need to aspire to. I always say what kids need in today's day and age, it's a lot more than what my generation needed when we went to school. Kids need a stronger education. They need more early child education in particular. We all got there with pre-K. We've made that universal. Now, starting in September, we're going to start down the road to 3K. And I look forward to the day when that is universal in the city. Every 3-year-old getting a high-quality early child education for free. I think the parents of the city are ready for that. All of our middle school kids getting after school for free and getting that opportunity to continue to learn in those hours after school. All of our kids getting advanced placement courses available to them in high school. That will soon be universal throughout our school system. This is all adding up. So to summarize, we've got 4 years in a row of improved test scores. We have the highest graduation rate we've ever had, the lowest dropout rate we've ever had. We have more students than ever taking AP exams and more students than ever passing the AP exams. This is all an example of a school system moving forward. 1.1 million children moving forward together. And it is really something that everyone here should be proud of because it took a lot of work. I know all the educators in the room understand it is a day-to-day, hour-to-hour effort to reach our children and help them be the best they can be. But guess what, guys? It's working. So congratulations to everyone because it's working. A few words in Spanish before I turn to the Chancellor. Por cuarto año consecutivo, los niños neoyorquinos progresaron en inglés y matemáticas. Los niños en todos los condados de la ciudad lograron mejores resultados en los exámenes estatales. Nuestras escuelas están avanzando más que nunca y estamos realizando inversiones para continuar ese progreso año tras año. With that, I've given a lot of credit rightfully to our teachers and educators and principals. I've given a lot of credit rightfully to our parents. But the captain of the ship deserves a lot of credit too. 4 straight years of progress under Chancellor Carmen Farina. Let's give her a big round of applause.
Thank you. And I want to add that across the city, we have also seen gains for all our English language learners and all our special needs kids. This is very, very important because when all of us rise, the system rises as a whole. But I'd like to also emphasize that leadership does matter. And I'd like to say who's standing behind me. So as I say something nice about you, could you please stand up? Safara Cruz. Okay, this is the principal of the Bronx School of Young Leaders, where the emphasis is on building confidence and voice.
You have to stand during the whole presentation.
No, just when I talk about you, okay? And what happens in this school is the students have ownership of some of their own work. And to me, real learning takes place when students understand why they're in school and what they have to do to get actually better. So thank you.
All right.
Sheila Durant. Now, Sheila, I won't say how many years you've been there, But Sheila Duran has many expertise, but one of them in particular is how to work with parents. This is the school we use for showcase sometimes. She has dinner with parents at night. The teachers come in to work on homework with parents, and this is a school that has consistently done outstanding work. So, Sheila, thank you for your leadership. Maria Vera Drucker. Now, Maria, I don't want to embarrass you, but I do embarrass you citywide all the time. This is a school predominantly of English language learners right in the heart of Bushwick with the best, and I've said this many times, right, STEM program, where first graders are learning how to code, where second graders say to me, Chancellor, you may be too old to learn this when I go visit their schools, but also understanding that I'm sending people through all parts of the city to visit your school to see, because you're also a showcase school. So thank you for that.
Okay.
Joanna Aduhar and also Martha Ganson, co-principals of Brooklyn Ascend Charter School. One of the charter schools, I went to work with one of your high schools, and we did my art lesson there. But this is also a charter school on the move in the sense of getting students more involved in their own learning, and we're proud to work with them through our Melissa Harris in her office, correct? So we thank you for being here. Helen Panella from IS 227. Now, for those of you who think leadership is easy, try being a leader of a middle school. You know how much I love that, Helen. And this is a middle school that really understands that students' voice does count, and that seventh graders are unique and special, and that if we get seventh grade right, high school is a piece of cake. Right, Helen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Amen. Well done.
Derek Dunlap, Rachel Early Advantage Charter School. And I want to make a very clear point here. Derek has only been principal for 2 years, right? And the school was not successful until Derek got there. It's important that kids be with the right teachers, but right leadership makes schools successful. So we thank you, Derek.
Well done.
Okay. And obviously, Anthony Constantino, Mr. C, from PS 21. And I would say one of the most important features of it's happening in almost all the schools out in Staten Island. The collaboration, the 3 universities in Staten Island are working with all the high schools in Staten Island, and all the high schools are working with the middle schools, and the middle schools are working with the elementary school. No one school stands alone, and these collaborations have made a big difference in terms of the work that's going on out there. So thank you.
Well done.
So really, I just want to reiterate that this is all good news. To me, we're moving forward, but today is really for us the first day of how we look at the scores. We're very excited. We're very happy. We know that things that we put in, more professional development for teachers, more professional development for principals, more emphasis on summer work. This year, I have visited almost 15 to 20 summer in the city sites. The excitement of what's happening in our schools, to that learning takes place all the time in a multitude of ways, is really, really important. And I think that the investment we've made on the Monday 80 minutes in collaboration with the UNFT has been crucial. The fact that we have emphasized careers and college pathways for everyone, I think, has made a difference, and particularly in our co-located high school sites, and there'll be 15 of them starting in September, where AP classes can be taken on any school on that campus to increase students' opportunities for the higher level work. Certainly pre-K, 3-year-olds in September. My first day of school, I'm going to go back and visit 3-year-olds. And I think this is the wave of the future, and something that a lot of people across the country are looking at us for. Algebra for All, we're increasing those programs. This September, we start with 14 districts doing literacy coaches, and they had 3 weeks of intensive training this summer to ensure that we do even more. We are excited about the scores, but now we analyze them even deeper, and we decide what is it that now has to be done school by school, district by district, to make sure that everyone is in the top percentile. So we're excited to be here today, but this is the work of parents, it's the work of teachers, it's the work of principals, but most importantly, it's the work of students. We need to get people excited about coming to school, and we need to make sure that every child has the best teacher possible, and every school has the best principal in their school. So it's a thrill to be here, and I'm excited. Oh, in Spanish. Okay, I will do Spanish.
I think you should do Spanish.
Okay. Es un placer.
This is like a running joke.
Okay, I always forget. Es mi placer estar aquí hoy y anunciar que todas las escuelas y todos los distritos de la ciudad de Nueva York están avanzando en literatura y la mayoría también en matemáticas. Pero esto es el primer día del resto de nuestra vida en la educación de la ciudad de Nueva York. Y para nosotros ahora el trabajo empieza ahora, mirando qué escuelas están saliendo mejor y qué escuelas necesitan más ayudas. Y dónde están las maestras que están haciendo trabajo que es increíble y dónde están las mejores directoras de escuelas. La gente que está detrás de mí es la gente que está haciendo la diferencia en las escuelas. Y a todos los padres que están escuchando, la cosa más importante es mandar sus hijos a la escuela todos los días. Solamente un día de escuela perdida es casi una semana de enseñanza que no están cogiendo. A todos es un día muy feliz para la ciudad de Nueva York. Llegamos a ser avanzando más que el resto del estado en las marcas de literatura y de matemáticas.
Muchas gracias.
De nada.
Now someone who speaks Spanish substantially better than me. We've had a great partnership with the City Council, and that has helped us move the Equity and Excellence Initiative. So I know Danny Drum feels the importance of this day as a public leader, but also as someone who devoted his life to teaching. You know how much hard work went into this progress. So my pleasure to introduce the chair of the Education Committee in the City Council, Danny Drum.
Thank you very much, Mayor de Blasio and Chancellor Farina, and thank you so much for your investment in New York City public school students. It has been tremendous, and we have seen a real sea change in terms of the approach taken here to get to the point where we are today. And that's something that's really important to me as a former New York City public school teacher. I taught for 25 years at PS 199Q, and I taught fourth grade. And I know that every time the test scores were released, we were always nervous, we were anxious, and we were filled with anticipation to find out what those scores would look like, because it does reflect on the instructors in the classroom, the practitioners, the people who actually sit with the children and tell the children, no, go back here and look at this, or find a clue there, or we check their comprehension here. And ultimately, that's what it's really all about, is good teaching methods. And I believe that this administration has freed up our teachers to teach. And I think that's ultimately why we see these really good scores. We're not talking today about drill and kill methods. We're talking about teaching the children the true joy of learning, teaching them that it's really important in life to know how to read, even in a technological society. These reading scores are but one aspect of a child's measurement of a child. But to our system as a whole, it's really important to know how we're doing overall, and that's why I think that these scores are so really important to all of us. And the fact that we outperformed the state is also really incredible. Outperformed the state, where oftentimes in some of the districts there are more resources than we've even had here in the city of New York. That deserves special mention. And on top of that, we have probably the largest number of English language learners in the whole state of New York, and yet they have to take the test 1 year after they come into the city. Could anybody in this room take a reading test 1 year after they come to the city if they're just learning English? And despite those obstacles or those things that we need to overcome as classroom teachers, we still outperformed the rest of the state. And look, there is more to do, and we will continue to move forward. I think so long as we continue to go down this route of trusting teachers, administrators, parents, to be real partners in making the education decisions that are necessary to get these types of results. So again, with added emphasis, I want to thank the teachers. Having been a teacher myself, I know what it is like to sit with a child and say, hey, look at this, go back there, do this or that, and to check those kids' work. So this is a great day, an exciting day, and I'm very proud to have this partnership with you in the City Council. And we look forward to coming next year again and seeing even better results. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, everyone, we're going to take questions about this announcement. Then I have a brief update on another topic, and then we're going to take questions on general topics. So, first, questions on this announcement. Yes?
Some of the renewals, a little less than half of the renewals, for example, didn't improve on math. I know most improved on English, but not all. Obviously, it's now been 3 years of the program. This is when the assessment's going to happen. I mean, if you see a school that didn't improve on English or math, I know that might not mean they're automatically marked for closure, but how seriously are you looking at schools that didn't improve? And are you going to rush more money to those schools, or are they sort of on the list for closure? And when will those closures be announced?
Okay. A 12-part question. Let me do my best here. So, okay, we've said from the beginning when we announced the renewal school effort that the time of decision would be November of this year, and we're sticking to that calendar. I said at the beginning we would give schools up to 3 years to prove that they could get better with the big investments we were making in them. And some schools have done really, really well, and I think are well on their way to no longer being renewal schools. Others may need some more time, but are showing consistent progress, so we're going to look at that option. There are going to be some, when we go through the whole process, I'm certain some will be slated for closure. But again, we have not done that full process yet. And there's others, as the Chancellor has pointed out, that for a long time we're just getting too small to be effective. And so there'll be situations, again, we've done this before, we've already had some closures, we've already had some mergers, you should expect more of those. But there'll be a very thorough process with each school. We want a lot of engagement with the school community, with parents and teachers on how we're going to handle each situation. But, we'll have that plan together in November. Do you want to add?
Yeah, I want to add that one of the things we're looking at, because, for the last 2 days I have analyzed this a million different ways, we'll also be looking, as I said, at school leadership. You will be seeing some leadership changes even in September of this year in schools that we feel that maybe with different leaders they will have at least some improved results. We're also digging deeper in terms of, is it a specific grade that came down? And we're also analyzing, we have a phenomenal renewal team, but we're also going to be doing a little work on the renewal team and making much more specific direct instruction, directors to go to all the schools to visit and analyze, because the test scores matter, but they're only one of multiple measures. For the first time, we now have over 200 highly effective teachers, for example, in the Bronx. That wasn't true before. So with the schools that had more of those teachers doing better results, and if that's not, do we move more in that direction? Are people using their Monday 80 minutes? So it's about looking deeper at every single school on the list. And also, one of the things I've already figured out, there are several schools that are outperforming others with what appears to be the same demographics. One of the lessons learned, how do we have showcase schools, even in renewal schools, that other people can go visit and see what it is? The departmentalization of fifth grade came out of one of our renewal schools, 154 in District 7. And the progress that Allison showed in that school is something that now other schools are copying from. So this is going to require a lot deeper analysis, but combined with all the other things the mayor said, we'll be making some decisions in the fall.
Okay, yes, Aaron.
So the scores show that the math achievement gap actually got worse, with white pass rates increasing 1.2% compared to 0.7 for black children and 1% for Hispanics. So are you doing anything to address this, and does this indicate to you, any kind of problem with how the schools are serving would actually make up the majority of students?
We're doing a lot to address it. The way I would summarize this as a layman is we had progress across all demographic groups, and that's a very good thing. What's not good enough is that we need to close that achievement gap, and that's where the equity and excellence vision comes in. We never expected it to have instantaneous results. We knew this would be something we'd have to build over years and years. But I'm convinced that the building blocks are now in place. You're going to see over the coming years the effect of pre-K, which I think is going to be disproportionately positive for kids of color who often did not get full-day early childhood education. You're going to see as 3K comes into play, that's going to magnify that positive effect. Obviously, the focus on reading by the end of second grade, going into third grade, getting all of our kids on grade level, that's in some ways going to be the single most profound change. And again, that will disproportionately help young people of color. So I would say it is a very good thing that test scores are improving across all demographic groups. But to close the achievement gap, these bigger reforms have to really take hold, and we expect to see that over the next few years. Other questions? Way back, yes, Andrew.
Mayor, how do you respond to charter school advocates who say that the increase in test scores is driven by them, and without the charter school performance, the city's public schools are flatter down?
Well, we have shown the disaggregation. I think the state in their data shows that. And clearly there was progress across the traditional public schools, very substantial and meaningful progress because, again, it was all districts, all demographic groups, math and English both. We want to see success from the charter schools as well. We want to see them improve. The bottom line, the approach we take is we want all kids to do well in our school system with our traditional public schools and our charter schools. We also want kids in religious schools to do well. And so, for example, when we've put together a lot of our newest initiatives, pre-K, after school for all middle school kids, now 3K, we're doing that with traditional public schools and charter schools and religious schools and community-based organizations. So they're all our children, right? They're all the future of New York City. We want them all to succeed. But the data shows clearly that traditional public schools have continued to make progress. Yes?
Chancellor, can you talk about the percentage of students opting out of Common Core in New York City most recently and how it compares to last year? Do you know those numbers?
Well, the opt-out in New York City is still among the lowest in the state of New York. Parents made choices for any number of reasons. It's obviously something that I have not encouraged. I think what we really need to reemphasize to parents is that by taking the test, you kind of see as a leader where it is we need to support your students. So we will be making more of an emphasis this year on educating parents about some of the changes. For example, we're going from 3-day test to a 2-day test. I don't know that that's been broadcast as much as it could be out there. One of the things I've been very emphatic about the last 2 years that I do not want to see test prep instead of teaching. Amen. The best test prep is good teaching. So as we get the word out more and more, and we talk to parents about how multiple measures are used, I think that more and more parents will think, I hope, that this is not a bad thing. Life is all about testing one way or the other. So getting the students to take some of these challenges in their classrooms with supportive teachers, with their colleagues, I think is really, really important. But ultimately, parents do make the choice. And we have also been assured that there will not be penalties in terms of the percentage. Our number is still under 5%. But it does affect certain grants that are given by the state, which schools cannot apply for if they have over a certain amount of opt-outs in their individual schools.
And let me emphasize, we're going to, again, very aggressively this coming school year, emphasize to parents that we fundamentally believe participation in the tests is the right thing to do. I think parents in the past felt the tests in some cases were too onerous. Again, I think both our school system and the state have addressed that issue by changing the approach to the tests. I think parents felt that test scores in many cases were being used for too many things, had too big an impact. We've shown, starting with the ending of the, I think, ridiculous grading of schools in the previous administration, we've shown that we've moved away from that emphasis on the high-stakes testing. But I think we have to do a lot more communicating to parents that constant changes are being made to put standardized tests in their proper place in the firmament, not to overrate them. But also it is a necessary piece of the equation, and it is valuable, and kids should participate. And the tests are a lot more fair than they used to be.
5% number. Do you see an increase or decrease from last year?
We saw a slight increase.
We'll get you the exact numbers, but there was a slight increase, yes. Okay, on this announcement.
Is it over here?
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're talking about closing the gap, but the state math and relay tests are graded on a curve. So unlike the state science tests, all children can't reach proficiency currently. Would you support a switch to grading the state ELA math tests? Would they be bacterial-based, not norm-based, not based on?
You're over my head in terms of your proficiency, so I don't actually understand the nuances. But Chancellor, would you like to speak to it?
I'm trying to figure out what the question.
What were this year's cut scores and were they changed from last year?
The cut scores were the same as last year.
They were. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and do you know where the cut score was?
We can get you that.
We can get that, but the reality is, one of the things that the commissioner was very clear about, that this test could be compared to last year's test. That may not happen going forward in terms of they make changes, but these two tests were actually comparable to each other.
Okay.
I'm currently in District 15 where we had quintuple the city's opt-out rate, and one of the many differences between District 15 and other districts are that Chancellor Freeman, you came and met with parents in a closed-door meeting and affirmed many of the deeply held concerns that our educators have about the tests. And I'm wondering, it says equity and excellence for all, I'm wondering about information for all. If you would be willing to share what you said with us.
Let me be very clear.
First of all, let me jump in on a ground rule. Appreciate their very sincere questions, but this is a press conference for media, so I didn't realize you were a parent, and we definitely want to address the issue, so we'll give you an answer here, but then from this point on, we're taking media questions. Go.
I have said consistently that I don't believe in opt-out, even in closed private meetings. And I had a superintendent that I do not believe in opt-out. That's where I'm.
And we were, the point I made before, we're going to more vigorously than ever, openly, publicly communicate with parents and take the questions too and the concerns to show the changes. I don't think parents understand, and I don't blame them. I don't think we've shown them the changes we're making in the approach to tests, and I want parents to be more comfortable about those changes. I think there has to be a lot more dialogue in this coming school year. Okay, last call on media questions on this topic, and then I have a quick update I want to give, and I'll take other questions. But on this topic, last call.
Could you talk a little bit more about the renewal scores, the extent to which they outpaced the overall city scores, and just if you feel that what you got from them was commensurate with the investment that you made?
So let me have Michelle Palladino first do the exact scores, and then let me speak to the bigger point, and the chancellor will.
So renewal schools went up 3.2 points compared to the citywide of 2.6 in English, and they went up 1.5 points in math compared to 1.3 for the city.
So look, here's what I'd say. I want to just frame it for a moment because I think it's really important to remember where we came from. The previous approach to struggling schools, I think, too often was, in the previous administration, was to close them down, leave a lot of kids in the lurch in the years after, or the years of the closure, right? So you had these kind of cusp years where things were not ready for the new school, and the school was phasing out, and a lot of kids, I think, got undereducated and treated unfairly in that time. There was a poor process for engaging parents, and there wasn't a clear sense of why the alternatives that would come in would be superior to that which is there. We said from the beginning we wanted to show a clear, open investment program in the schools that had historically struggled. And it's all also very clearly linked to other realities. These are a lot of schools where kids unfortunately come from lower income families or from families that have many English language learners in the family who of course are going to have a harder time learning English and growing in our school system in the first years. So we knew that there was a historic approach that hadn't worked. We wanted to show very openly that we would give every school a chance to succeed. And this was both a matter of educational philosophy, but also an article of faith with parents. Show, look, we're going to invest in your school, we're going to invest in your kids, we're going to give it every chance to succeed. We did exceptional things like adding after-school programs, adding an extra period of instruction, things that really were tangible. But we also said 3 years was going to be the maximum time frame for decisions. In some cases, even before 3 years, we decided a school should not continue in place or should be merged. But what I think we expect at the end of this process in the next 3 months is that, again, a good number of schools are going to make it for the long haul. I can't give you an exact number yet, but I can say based on everything I'm seeing, we always thought there was a chance that a substantial number, dozens of schools, are going to make it for the long haul. Some are going to need a little more work, but have the clear potential to make it for the long haul, succeed, be the same school for the long haul, getting better all the time. Others undoubtedly are going to close. I don't have an exact number for you or which ones yet, and then some others I think will merge. But what we can say will have been profoundly different from the previous experience is that everyone will have seen with their own eyes that a strong effort was made to see if the school could be turned around as it was. And if it can't be achieved, there's going to be real numbers, real facts as to why, and then a clear process for creating something else. Now, the other thing we've done that was not done in the past is we've said to parents, if your school doesn't make it, you will have your child assigned to 1 or 2 or 3 other specific options. You're not going to have to hunt. You're not going to be left in the lurch. You have an opportunity to go right into another option the following school year, a school that is doing better, and have that continuity. That was not part of the previous approach. So that's the way we're thinking about it. And again, we'll come to all those decisions and announce them in the fall. Yeah.
It doesn't usually generate much discussion, I think, because it's a foregone conclusion at this point, but the city's Asian kids perform the best in both math and English. A lot of these kids aren't rich, a lot of them don't live in the best neighborhoods, a lot of them don't speak English when they come here. Do you have any theories as to why they achieve at this clip?
I don't pretend to be an expert on that. I think every child is different, every family is different. I think historically, families that do have stronger economic circumstances do better, and a lot of those kids also came from families that were middle class and doing well. But no, I don't have an overall theory. I think for years and years in this city and all over the country, a lot of kids were not given a decent education. And we're trying to break a cycle of history. And that's what the Equity and Excellence Vision is all about. So, I think it's a question that will be very different to answer as this approach take hold. I think this will be a great control model. Every kid getting early child education, first pre-K, then 3K, every kid having a concerted effort to get them to reading level by the time they take those third grade tests. We've never seen anything like that before in the history of New York City. We tolerated as a city, at the end of the previous administration, about 30% of our kids were reading on grade level by third grade, 30%. That was tolerated. I'm not saying it was just about that administration, it was tolerated by every previous administration. We've never even tried to create consistent equity across all demographic groups. So we believe this plan will be the first time you're actually seeing what it looks like to apply resources evenly. And I will not be surprised if what you see is then a substantial and fast closing of that achievement gap.
We're not next year, but the year after, your first class of the expanded pre-K will be taking the third grade test. But for the sake of today's discussion, what expectations do you have in terms of improved test scores based on students that the expanded pre-K offers?
I'll start and I'll turn to the educators. Look, there's no question in my mind from all the work we've done in pre-K and going right back to experience I had with my two kids in full-day pre-K, that every child having had that experience will improve performance. Now, I remind you, we believe in multiple measures. So test scores are one of the ways that you judge performance, and some kids are great at tests and some kids are not. But when you talk about performance overall, it is absolutely an article of faith from my point of view that if every kid has pre-K, you go from 20,000 a year to 70,000 a year, of course that's going to affect the test scores favorably, and it should. It's also going to affect other measures of educational achievement. So I feel strongly that's what we'll start to see.
I would like to say that one of the things for next year that we should be looking at is that 4 of the districts in the city also had the literacy coaches all last year. So to me, combining the pre-K with the 4 districts that had the literacy coaches will be a telling story. And this is mainly anecdotal, but what I've asked principals to look at as they're beginning to open in September, have they already seen second graders in those 4 districts moving to third grade at a higher level of literacy? And what I'm hearing is yes, because the independent reading component that they've done has made them much happier about going into third grade. So I think there's going to be lots of ways of measuring this, but I see seeing those 2 aligned with each other would be a good benchmark. Because remember, we're starting 10 new districts this year, but it's the 4 that we started last year that should be telling us something.
Just very quickly, I think it would help everyone if you gave them a definition of what the presence of literacy coaches across the district actually does that changes day-to-day instruction.
Okay, the literacy coaches, and we went from 4 districts last year to 14 this coming year. Any of you getting them next year? Back there? Yes. Okay. You're going to be very happy about that, Sheila, right? These are teachers that have been trained. They have to apply. They have to be interviewed. They have to be accepted. They had 3 weeks of intensive training over the summer to go into school to be what I call teacher whisperers. They don't work individually with students. They work with teachers. And they work with all teachers in K, first and second grade to do model classroom lessons and also to do PD simply for those teachers on how to teach reading.
Professional development.
Professional development. Because everybody knows that. That's like I'm the queen of. But the reality is that many of our teachers may not have had the right training in their college years on how to teach reading. And this goes across the board to teachers who teach special ed and teachers who teach English language learners. And they have been very, very successful in the course of the last 2 years. I just went to the training this summer, and the people were all, and many of these teachers have been teaching for 10, 15 years, and they said they learned strategies this summer that they never would have thought before. So I really do think of this as one of our equity and excellence benchmarks that is really going to make a big difference.
Okay. Yeah.
Like a data expectation or a data target for the test score increases of the...
Based on pre-K, I don't think we've modeled that yet.
Only in my mind.
Yeah. Yes.
Just wanted to ask you about the figures up there, the 54% increase and the 27% increase. Just wondering what those are based on, what the math is based on, because it looks like you calculated the percentage increase between 2%.
So I'll start and Michelle can go into it. We looked at the last, so it's 4 years, it's literally 4 years, so the last full school year of the previous administration to the school year just ended.
You're calculating the percentage change between two figures that are already percent.
So it's showing the percent change. So for the 14 points, that represents a 54% increase over the 2013 year.
Just say what the original point was and the
Yeah,
current.
so it's 14.2 points, and that translates to 54%.
Right, I'm saying the starting point 4 years ago, the proficiency level was?
26.4.
Okay, and now the proficiency level is?
40.6.
Right, so thus forget the percentage for a moment, so just think about kids. That extrapolates that to only 26% of our kids used to be proficient. Now 40% of our kids are proficient. That's a substantially larger number of kids who are proficient for the same kind of test, for the same grade level. So we simply said what the percentage jump had been.
Right, but I guess... I studied math decades ago. My recollection is that wasn't the right way to calculate that figure. You have to take the raw number of students who were proficient and then compare it to
That's what we did. Yeah, I mean, it's just another way of looking at the same 14.2. It's just demonstrating how much that 14.2 means relative to where it started in 2013.
Michelle will happily compare math techniques with you. All right, anything else on this announcement? And you are, I don't know you, you're from the media, yes? Go ahead.
Just to follow up on your renewal schools that you were talking about, in terms of the schools that do succeed, are you concerned that they might become victims of their own success? Because if they lose a lot of the funding and the supports that bolster them, then what's going to happen is going to be sort of a negative cycle of feedback.
That's a very important question. I appreciate it. First of all, if we believe a school needs continued help, we're certainly ready to do that. We have to work out the details, but we're not going to leave a school in the lurch if we think it is succeeding but needs a certain amount of support to maintain and consolidate the gains, right? I believe what you're going to see is momentum dynamics, because we've seen it in plenty of other schools already. There's sort of, again, they get to a certain critical mass point where things are working. Often there's new and better leadership, or new teachers have come in, master teachers have come in, whatever it may be that's helped to strengthen the situation, and that support is not needed for the long term. I think that's what you're going to find. You might see another year or two where some extra support is needed, but then the school will be on a positive, consistent track and can be handled the way any other school would be. I think if you had a school that for years and years and years you thought could not break through, then it would beg the question of whether that should ultimately be a closure. So as I indicated, it's not going to be as simple as the only outcomes are a school graduates out of renewal status or is closed or is merged. I think there is another category, a school that is making steady progress, needs support for at least 1 more year, maybe 2 more years, and then we expect to graduate out.
A lot of the supports at the renewal schools are not even on the teaching side, but are on the health supports and that sort of thing. So if you have new students streaming in who still have those kinds of needs, then what happens to those students?
Well, yeah, and so I think the important point, and I'll say, and the Chancellor speak to as well, is literally you're talking about an individual judgment on each school based on many measures and trying to determine a strategy that will work for the long term. So we're going to reserve the right to make a choice in each case. If we think a school is doing really, really well, it needs one particular kind of investment. We do this all the time with schools. Sometimes is I think part of the brilliance of what the chancellor has done. She looks at each school individually, and she has the capacity to do it, literally figuring out what each school needs to succeed. So to use your example, if we say, hey, a school's made steady progress, but we think taking away a particular attribute could be harmful, well, we have the option to keep that attribute in place.
I think also we have to be very clear that we hold schools harmless in other categories as well, not just in the renewal world. So how long do you hold harmless? Like a year, 2 years? But the other piece is that when you're talking about the mental health clinics and all those things that are crucial, that's part of our community involvement, our community-based organizations, and our community schools. So I do not anticipate that will be taken away, but I think, for example, we have positions that we have assigned to renewal schools like DSRs, the renewal school people, and they may spend less time in a school that's doing well and then more time in a school that needs more support. So how we use those particular positions will change based on what we've seen in the schools. I think also looking at schools, if there's a principal, and I can think of at least 10, that have done some outstanding work, do they become partners with other principals in this to show and reflect the work they're doing? So we're going to be looking at our renewal team, and we've already started restructuring what some of the support will look like based on these new numbers. So we're obviously going to be making changes all the time, but if there are certain things like the support for parents that we think is crucial in certain communities, that's not going to go away. If anything, we'd like to add that in schools that are not renewal schools.
Okay, any other? Yes.
Given that your agenda is equity and excellence, are you disappointed that there's still an achievement gap, or do you feel like there's progress being made? How?
Well, first of all, how in the world can you close an achievement gap in 1 or 2 years? I mean, it's taken 20 years to create the gap. It's going to take us hopefully a lot less.
I would argue respectfully a lot more than 20 years to create the gap.
So here, the fact that we're even talking about it, focused on it, everybody's like brained into their head, and we're talking about it constantly. There isn't a meeting I go to where it's not part of the discussion. And now we're saying to people, no excuses allowed. This is something you have to work on. I just went to the new teacher training, right? What did you have, 2,000, whatever it was, teaching? And one of the things that really stood out to me is the excitement of new teachers coming to field. So if we're going to close the gap, we also need to make sure that people want to become teachers, that the teachers in front of children's classrooms reflect who they are. We're doing a lot of recruiting on that. But also that we talk about teaching in the most positive way. So we're not going to close the gap overnight. I have a real, and Michelle will reinforce this, when I see percentages, there's this percentage that may be too high, and I have to say, my God, how do we get there? So this is slow and steady wins the race, but this is definitely our goal across the board in every school in New York City, not just in some schools.
Yeah, look, this is based on generations of disparity, and that doesn't, for a moment, make us any less urgent in our desire to address it. We're just clear-eyed. This is going to be a long battle. But what's good is we're seeing consistent progress. Students of color are doing better all the time. Here's the three simple things I use as evidence of why literally the approach previously was not serious about addressing disparity. I'm saying that across many administrations and many chancellors, because we didn't start where we could have the biggest impact, which was early childhood education. If you do not provide universal early childhood education, you are magnifying disparities in our society. So one of the actual difference makers we have that creates a level playing field is to give every child full day, high quality early childhood education. I am convinced you're going to see very substantial impact from that as that takes full effect. The second was literacy. Again, how we think we're the greatest city in the world. We are the greatest city in the world in so many ways. How are only 30% of our kids reading on grade level by third grade, which is considered by a lot of educators the great indicator of whether you can continue to progress effectively? That didn't need to be. There could have been a focus on literacy early on. It's absolutely required to focus on early childhood education as well. And then I used the advanced placement example. Talk about disparity. You had high schools for generations who had advanced placement courses, and you had others that had none, and that bluntly, obviously correlated to race and class. It's as clear as a bell. What kind of message does it send to kids that you go to high school and there's no advanced placement courses, but 2 miles away there's a high school that has a lot of advanced placement courses, and in the other high school the message is you're going to college, but in your high school the message is don't even bother, right? That's the history in too many cases. We're flipping the script on that. Every high school has advanced placement courses. Every middle school and high school will send a message. Any kid can make it to college if that's what's right for them. So I believe we will, year by year, close that achievement gap. I really do. But I don't think it would ever have been possible if these fundamental changes weren't made. See if there's anything else on this announcement. Okay, let me go to the quick update I mentioned. So we have just gotten information about an hour ago from the National Weather Service. We have a heat advisory on, and this will be in effect until 6 o'clock tonight. So it's a brief period of time, but people need to take it seriously. Temperatures have been going up throughout the morning into the afternoon. We're in the low 90s now. The heat index makes it feel like more than 100 degrees. So for the next 5-6 hours, it's going to be intensely hot. We hope that will break tonight, and we'll be back to more normal summer temperatures by tomorrow. But in the meantime, the classic rules people should live by: stay hydrated throughout the day. Don't go outdoors any more than you need to. Stay in a cool place as much as you can. If you need a cool place and you don't have one, you can call 311. We have cooling centers open now all over the city. And finally, please check on your neighbors, particularly seniors or folks who are ill, to make sure they're okay and they have everything that they need. So I wanted to give you that update, and now welcome questions on any other topics. In the back. Yes, Andrew.
Just before you began speaking, there was a demonstration on the steps of this building about bias training. Some families and teachers have said that you can promise to provide bias training to teachers, and here we are 3 weeks before the start of school. They say it has not been scheduled and it's not taking place. Can you explain that?
Sure. Look, this is a case of everyone being in rigorous agreement. I believe Councilmember Reynoso is a part of this demonstration. I agree with the vision he has, and we, in fact, came to an agreement in June on how to proceed, and we're following through on that agreement. So if the folks who are demonstrating are certainly trying to emphasize how much this is important, we agree with them. And not just because of the horrible events in Charlottesville, but even before that, back in June, we had long come to the conclusion that we wanted to do a lot more in training our teachers in this area, and we're going to do it.
Well, why has it not happened already?
I'm not sure that's accurate.
Because we've had this summer, we have been training teachers, and we will expect to continue training them as the beginning of the school year.
Notice we're following through on what we committed to, and we feel that's been consistent. Okay, Yoav.
Mr. Mayor, I wanted to ask you, there's a number of council members who think the Christopher Columbus statue should be included among the city's review. Wondering if you had a personal opinion about that, but also if that kind of suggests how kind of tricky an issue this might be to tackle.
Look, everyone should acknowledge these are complex issues. And that's why it was important to put together a commission, which we will name in the coming days. Folks with a lot of expertise looking at these kind of issues, to, as I said yesterday, come back with both an approach that's universal, a universal set of standards that can govern how we deal with monuments of concern on city-owned land, and their specific proposals about specific monuments, and then I'll make decisions based from there. I said yesterday I want to emphasize it today and for every press conference thereafter. I'm not going to editorialize on each and every name and each and every monument. I think the important thing to do is let that commission get going, let them take every nomination, if you will, from everyday New Yorkers, from elected officials, activists, look at the whole picture and come back with a plan. That's what I want to see happen. Marcia.
Well, this is sort of a follow-up question. A number of Jewish groups are upset about Grant 2 because they say he initiated what they call one of the most blatant official episodes of anti-Semitism in the 19th century. In 1862, he signed the General Order Number 11, which expelled Jews from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Mississippi. I wonder if you think that somebody who did that, even a large number of Jews who live in New York, should be buried here in New York.
Marcia, I'm not familiar with that history. Obviously, I take it very seriously, but I'm just not familiar with it. You know, we don't tolerate anti-Semitism in New York City. It's as simple as that. But I'm going to put it in the same category as I just did. We have to look at each one of these cases. We'll have a commission that does that. They're going to come up with some universal rules about how to approach these situations and some recommendations about the areas that are of concern. But it's just not my place to editorialize in each one. I don't know the facts.
Where do you think this should go? I mean, you've got your middle appointed commission. You're going to give them some guidelines, I assume. How far should they go in deciding what's appropriate for New York City and what's not?
The role of a commission is to advise. They're not making the ultimate decision. Depending on the specific sites, if it's something that my agencies control, I'll make the decision with my agencies. Other situations we may handle differently. But again, we have not looked at this as a city on a consistent basis. Let's be really clear about that, Marcia. We are starting from scratch. I think a lot of history that needs to be reevaluated, you know, went unspoken for a long time. And a lot of people felt pain because of that. And we've got to come up with some kind of standard for dealing with it. These issues, you've watched this stuff for a long time. I mean, these are things that have been brought up over years and years. This particular instance, I honestly don't know, and I thought I knew something about American history, but I don't know about that at all. But a number of the other things that have been talked about recently have been raised over years, but there was no forum for making sense of it all. And I think the events in Charlottesville, but other events have really put to the fore a desire in this city and this country to finally make sense of our past and decide what we want to honor going forward. It's a big, complex area. So I think you're asking the right question. You know, where do we go? But I think the best thing New York City can do is try and create some kind of ground rules, try and create some kind of model. And it's going to be an open public discussion, right? We want people to be able to propose what they think should happen and how to go about it and specific things that should be looked at. When it's all over, what I hope we have is something any New Yorker can look at and say, okay, that's a fair standard, that makes sense. Not everyone's going to agree out of 8.5 million people, but at least, you know, a plan, because right now all you can do is everyone think about each one individually, and that doesn't work. We have to make sense of this as a whole.
About President Grant, I mean, does that give you pause, given the fact that he did, you know, expel Jews from these days?
Again, Marcia, no disrespect to you. I don't know that. You're the first person to say to me, I don't know the history. I have no context, so I'm not going to comment on something I'm hearing for the first time. I am sure he is a complex historical figure like many others. But the right thing to do is to actually have a public process to make sense of this. By the way, there have been countries in the world that went through horrible wars, violent civil wars, and had truth and reconciliation commissions, a much more difficult task than what we're talking about here. Surely in New York City, we can have an open civic process to decide what we want to celebrate and what we don't want to celebrate going forward. That's what it comes down to, right? We're talking about things that are monuments that we, in effect, give some kind of public approval to. We have to make sense of what to do. And I also want to caution, Marcia, on city-owned land. Anything that's federal we can have opinions on, but the federal government's going to make that decision. This commission will focus on things that are on city-owned land. Yes, Gloria?
Mayor, same topic. There's a council member, Mark Levine, is calling on you to remove the portrait of Governor Horatio Seymour that's hanging inside of City Hall. I believe his campaign slogan, sorry to carry on the history lesson here, was "Let white men rule." He's writing to you today asking you to remove that from inside of City Hall. Have you looked at that?
No, I've not looked at it. Never have heard of this individual. Don't know anything about his obviously horrible campaign slogan. So again, I'm not going to comment on individual situations, particularly ones I've never heard of before. We're going to have a process. So I want to say, guys, over the coming weeks, or it's really going to be 90 days, you can ask as many times as you want. I'm going to keep saying to you, this is going to be handed to the commission to try and make sense of everything as a whole. And that's a big job. But that we have to try and treat these things, you know, as a whole product where we make one standard that we will use to address everything on city-owned property. Back.
Does that include extending things like Carol Stroll down on Wall Street? Keeping Carol Stroll around?
I think it's a different matter. I think that is, it is related. There's no question. It gets to the question of how we approach public monuments. So I think that's a different question, which is what do we do with a new monument. As you know, sometimes temporary art exhibits have been allowed. This is one that was allowed on a temporary basis. There's now a desire to make it permanent. I gave it another year so we could think about that, but I think that's a different discussion from what I want this commission to do.
Is the commission only going to be looking at existing statues, or is there any thought about, adding new statues as far as, people who haven't been recognized historically and should be?
Yeah,
Do you have any thoughts on?
I think that's, no, it's a fair point, but I think that's even a different mission still. I think the first mission is to make sense of what we have on city-owned land. And we can comment on anything controlled by the federal government. We can comment on anything controlled by the state. We can comment on things that are on private property. But the job right now is to look at what is going on in city-owned land, city buildings, et cetera, come up with a clear standard, take any and all ideas and nominations from everyday New Yorkers, and we'll set up a public process to do that. Come up with a standard, come up with a list of recommendations that fit that standard for what to do with what we have now. I think a separate issue, you raise an important point, is, well, do we want to start to do some new things that might also be about creating fairness and a better representation of our history? I know we have a lot more to do on that front. I think it's Helen Rosenthal from the City Council has made the point there's not a single monument or statue to a woman in all of Central Park, and there's all sorts of other statues and monuments to men. That's a clear example of the kind of thing we need to think about and change going forward. But again, I see this commission as trying to make sense of what we have now and coming up with a single standard to address what we have already. Yeah, Rich.
So, Mr. Mayor, would this commission apply only to statues or also to like school names? I mean, it seems to me that there's a broadness to this. Sure. That's limitless.
I don't think it's limitless, but I think it's a good point. I mean, I didn't know about this portrait until Gloria mentioned it 5 minutes ago, so I wasn't even thinking about portraits in City Hall, but it's a perfectly fair question. To some extent, the commission is going to have to figure out what are the appropriate boundaries of what we're talking about in terms of things on city-owned land. Statues and monuments are obvious. I think it's a fair question, the naming of buildings. Is that something we want to look at? We may end up doing this in stages because it is big and complex stuff. Look, guys, we're trying to unpack 400 years of American history here. That's really what's going on. I know you guys have to think about writing a story for today, and I respect it, but I would say talk about having to add some historical perspective to the equation. This is complicated stuff. But, it's a lot better to be talking about it and trying to work through it than ignoring it. Because I think for a lot of people in this city and in this country, they feel, their history has been ignored or affronts to their history have been tolerated. I have to say the obvious. I was watching a ball game the other night, and I was looking at the Cleveland Indians, and they have the logo of the really derogatory logo of a Native American on their sleeve. I'm like, how is that possible in the year 2017, right? And if you happen to be Native American, that must feel pretty bad. So this is something we're talking about all over the country. It's not going to happen overnight. Like, this is the first step in trying to create a better approach. But Rich, I think you asked a good question. How much should be covered in the first round? I can say at minimum, we're going to deal with monuments and statues. We have to figure out how much more, and if it's something we end up doing over more months and years, we'll do it. Okay, but last call. Who is it? Two last calls. Okay, one and then two. Go ahead.
You or maybe the chancellor just give us an update on the absent teacher reserve and what happens to those teachers involved in it as we approach the upcoming school year.
Yeah, I'll start and I'll pass it to the chancellor. So, look, we have been very serious about reducing the absent teacher reserve. I don't like the way it was handled in the past. I felt very strongly that our mission is to make sure that good teachers, and that's the vast majority of our teachers, that good teachers have every opportunity to thrive and grow in their profession. A huge emphasis on professional development this chancellor has included. But also there are people who shouldn't be in the profession, and we want to make sure for someone who shouldn't be in the profession that they are aided in moving along. And that's been about 1,900 teachers over the last 4 years who have left the profession. In terms of absent teacher reserve, we've reduced it about 300 from where it was at the same point in time at the end of the last administration. We have a plan to reduce it by 400 more, so now we're 800 plus. We're going to reduce it by 400 more in the next jump. And we're going to give every quality teacher an opportunity to get on a good track, and teachers who have some challenges and some question marks will have a chance to once and for all prove themselves, and if they can't do it, there's going to be a fast and clear and rigorous evaluation process, and if they don't succeed in that process, then we're going to help them out of the profession too.
Well, first and foremost, I want to reiterate that this is not forced placement. All principals in New York City have till the middle of October to fill any vacancy that they have in their schools. I want to say that again. As a principal, when I was under the old regime, and not just the prior, but many, many prior, if I got a teacher on what was then called a seniority transfer plan, I mean, I had to lose one of my own teachers, or teacher that I had hired. That is not the case here. So first and foremost, any principal who can fill a vacancy based on either job fairs or however else they can do it, by all means, they should be encouraged to do so. By October 15th, you theoretically have a class with no teacher standing in front of it. We now have all these teachers who are licensed teachers who could be working in front of those classes. They will be assigned to schools. Principals will interview them as they would have interviewed anyone else, and they will receive support from Randy Asher and his team to make that teacher as successful as possible. I also want to say that there are a substantial number of ATR teachers who are actually okay. And not only okay, but good. I went to a school recently where the principal introduced me to the ATR teacher. She's fabulous. But then when I say, well, why aren't you hiring her? It comes down to money. Well, if I can get her for free, we have to stop playing these games. So to me, the ATRs will be placed after October 15 in consultation with the principal and then supported to the degree that if it's not a good fit, then we will help that teacher either leave the system or go somewhere else. So I feel very, very comfortable that this is the right way to go to get a good teacher in front of every classroom. And also I want to reiterate, which I don't think everybody's kind of on the same page on this one, these teachers have no longer been sitting in rubber rooms since I got here. They have been going to schools. They have been rotated from one school to another. They've been rotated every other month. This is a way of saying you can't prove whether you're a good teacher or not a good teacher unless you've been in a situation over time. So this placement in a school over time, to me, is a good way to, in good faith, do what's best for teachers, for principals, but most importantly for kids. So I do believe this is the right way to go, and I certainly will be monitoring this very closely during the beginning of the school year.
Last call. I'll go do two last calls because you didn't get in before Mr. President.
Talking with Sal Albanese ahead of the debate, he said that one of the major things he's going to stress is about ethics and about City Hall having, questions around donations and favors and some of the things that obviously we discussed a lot over the last couple of years. Why do you think that at this point, heading into your first debate of re-election, that is something he sees as, a vulnerability?
I can't speak for him. I mean, all of those issues were looked at by multiple entities and everything was resolved. And look, I think the election should be not about things in the past that are already behind us, but about what's going to be necessary for everyday New Yorkers to do better in this city. So I'm going to talk about affordable housing. I'm going to talk about things we just did with the City Council. Thank you, Danny, like making sure anyone facing eviction has a lawyer to stop illegal evictions and harassment by landlords. I'm going to talk about improved test scores, improved graduation rates for our kids. I'm going to talk about crime going down for 4 years in a row. I think that's what people want to talk about, and they want to know what's next and what's going to make it better and how people can be able to afford to live here. So, I think it must be difficult if you're a challenger and you're looking at those facts. I guess you have to try and change the discussion to something else because it's hard to argue with those facts.
You said earlier that you will be announcing which renewal schools will be closed in November, or announcing it in November, closed in June. Are you worried then that the ATR pool will swell again with a round of school closures?
Well, I'll start and pass to the Chancellor. Look, first of all, we're talking about, in the scheme of things, a pretty limited number of schools. Some have already been acted on, as you know, of the original pool. And again, I'm convinced a very substantial number will continue either, quote unquote, graduate out of the renewal status or get an extension to continue to get support. But I think the new approach that's being taken to the ATRs emphasizes that for, again, the vast majority of teachers who are good teachers end up in an ATR, for example, because of a closure or a merger. that right away we're identifying them and working to get them to their next assignment for the following September. That wasn't done sufficiently before. I really want to commend Randy Asher, who I know very well from Dante's 4 years as a student at Brooklyn Tech. He is focused on, you never even have to go to the ATR pool in that kind of context. You finish the school year one place, you're identified as a teacher ready to go into a new setting, and your new setting is chosen with you and with the principal in time for the following September. So I do not see a major impact on the numbers.
No, I would agree. We have a very specific protocol going into this now to do as much of this from the day we announce it to the be opening of school. So I do not see that as an issue.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.